For 90 minutes inside a sealed stadium in Texas, the Netherlands did everything a great football team is supposed to do. They controlled the ball, they took the lead, they lost it, took it back, and led again. They were 6 minutes from the perfect start. And then, in the 88th minute, a ball came off a corner, glanced off the head of the wrong man at the wrong time, and a record that had stood for the entire history of Dutch World Cup football was gone. This is the story of how Japan refused to lose a game they probably should have lost. A 2-2 draw that felt, by the final whistle, like a Japanese victory and a Dutch defeat, even though the scoreline said neither. We are going to walk through every goal, every turning point, and every moment that mattered in one of the most dramatic openers of the entire tournament. And by the time we get to that final corner, you will understand exactly why the Netherlands walked off the pitch in Dallas looking like a team that had been robbed, and why Japan walked off believing they belong among the genuine contenders. But before the chaos, you need to understand what these two teams were carrying into this match. Because that is the only way the ending makes any sense at all. Let us set the stage. This was Group F of the 2026 World Cup, the first expanded tournament with 48 teams, and the group was a genuine minefield. The Netherlands, Japan, Sweden, Tunisia. The top two would advance automatically, with a chance for the third-place side to sneak through as one of the best runners-up. On paper, the Netherlands and Japan were the two favorites to go through, which made this opening match enormous. Win it, and you've got a foot in the knockout rounds before you've even faced the rest of the group. Lose it, and suddenly every remaining game becomes a knife edge. The venue was Dallas Stadium, the home of American football's Cowboys in Arlington, Texas, a vast indoor cathedral with the roof closed against the brutal summer heat outside. A crowd of 69,285 packed the place, and a huge portion of them, it turned out, were dressed in the blue of Japan. The samurai blue traveled in numbers, and they would have plenty to celebrate before the night was done. Now, the Netherlands came into this tournament as one of the great nearly teams in football history. 12 World Cup appearances, 3 times a runner-up, in 1974, in 1978, and again in 2010, and never, not once, have they lifted the trophy. No nation in the history of the World Cup has finished second as often as the Dutch without ever winning it. That's a heavy thing to carry. A reputation for beautiful football and broken hearts. Under coach Ronald Koeman, they had rebuilt steadily after missing the 2018 tournament entirely, reaching the quarterfinals in Qatar before losing to eventual champions Argentina on penalties, and they qualified for this World Cup unbeaten from their European group. They were experienced, they were organized, and they were captained, as they have been for years, by Virgil van Dijk, one of the finest defenders of his generation. But they arrived with problems. Jurrien Timber, a key defender, was missing. Matthijs de Ligt was managing a back issue that left his involvement in doubt. And the biggest question of all hung over Memphis Depay, the all-time leading scorer in Dutch history with 55 international goals. Depay was nursing a hamstring problem carried over from his club season, and despite Koeman hinting beforehand that his talisman might be fit to start, the truth was that Depay would not be ready from the opening whistle. That decision, as we will see, would shape the entire Dutch attack. Then there was Japan. And here's the thing about this Japanese team. Many observers genuinely believe this was the strongest version of the Samurai Blue that has ever existed. Consider the numbers from their qualifying campaign. 54 goals scored, just 3 conceded, across an entire qualification cycle. They were the first non-host nation on the planet to secure their place at this World Cup, booking their ticket while most of the football world was still working out the math. This was their 8th consecutive World Cup, and they came in riding a wave of confidence, having beaten both Germany and Spain in the group stage in Qatar 4 years earlier. two of the giants of the world game, dispatched by a team that simply refused to be intimidated. But Japan, too, were wounded. Their captain, Wataru Endo, the steel in their midfield, had been ruled out of the entire tournament with a late injury, a devastating blow. And winger Kaoru Mitoma, one of their most dangerous attackers, was also missing with a hamstring problem. So coach Hajime Moriyasu had to reshape his spine and find leadership from a different set of players. There was also a piece of history sitting on this fixture that almost nobody outside the two countries was talking about. In their entire history, Japan had never beaten the Netherlands. 3 previous meetings, 2 friendlies and 1 World Cup, the 2010 tournament in South Africa, where the Dutch won 1-0 on their way to the final. Japan had never found a way past the Orange. This was their best chance yet, the strongest team they'd ever sent, against a Dutch side dealing with absences on the biggest stage of all. So the teams walked out. Koeman set his Netherlands up to dominate the ball. In goal, Bart Verbruggen, a backline of Denzel Dumfries, Jan-Paul van Hecke, captain Virgil van Dijk, and Mickey van de Ven. A midfield engine of Frenkie de Jong, Ryan Gravenberch, and Tijani Reinders. And up front, with Depay on the bench, the attacking trio of Crescencio Somerville, Cody Gakpo, and Daniel Malen. A side built to govern possession and stay solid against Japan's notorious counter-pressing. Moriyasu answered with a technical, fluid Japanese 11. Zion Suzuki in goal. A defense of Tsuyoshi Watanabe, Shogo Taniguchi, and Hiroki Ito of Bayern Munich. Takefusa Kubo, the gifted Real Sociedad playmaker. Ritsu Doan and Kato Nakamura providing high-energy width. Kaishu Sano and Daichi Kamada working the central zones. Daizen Maeda buzzing in behind. And Ayase Ueda leading the line. A team structured to absorb Dutch pressure and then explode forward in transition the instant they won the ball back. The plan was set, the tactical battle was drawn, and then the football began. The first half, in truth, was not a classic. It was cagey, tense, a chess match where both sides were more worried about making a mistake than seizing the moment. The Netherlands had the ball, as expected, knocking it around patiently, probing for an opening. Japan sat in their shape, compact and disciplined, waiting for the chance to spring. Chances were rare and precious, but there were flashes. The most entertaining duel of that opening period was between the Dutch winger Daniel Malen and the Japanese goalkeeper Zion Suzuki. Malen tested him, and Suzuki answered. The young keeper also produced a sharp save to deny Cody Gakpo, standing tall when the Netherlands finally worked the ball into a dangerous area. At the other end, Japan gave a quiet hint of what was coming, with efforts from Nakamura and Ueda that suggested they were not simply here to defend for 90 minutes. They were here to hurt the Dutch. Still, the two teams went into the break level at 0 apiece, and you could have been forgiven for thinking this might be a forgettable, low-scoring stalemate. You would have been spectacularly wrong. Because everything that made this match unforgettable happened after halftime. The game didn't just come to life in the second half, it detonated. The first goal came in the 50th minute, and it was a thing of textbook quality. The Netherlands won a position out wide, and Ryan Gravenberch swung an across. Rising to meet it, completely unmarked in the heart of the Japanese box, was the one man you absolutely cannot leave free. Virgil van Dijk, the captain, the Liverpool Colossus. He met his club teammate's delivery and powered a header back across goal and into the net. 1-0 to the Netherlands. The Dutch had done exactly what they set out to do, controlling the game and then striking from a moment of quality. Van Dijk wheeled away, and in the stands the orange contingent roared. This was the plan unfolding perfectly. But here's the thing about this Japanese team. They have a habit, a genuine pattern of responding to adversity rather than crumbling under it. Remember, in Qatar, they conceded first against both Germany and Spain, and came back to beat both of them. Going a goal down doesn't break this team. It wakes them up, and it took them just 6 minutes to prove it again. The 57th minute. Takefusa Kubo, Japan's most creative force, picked up the ball and slid a pass through to Kato Nakamura. Nakamura took it, drifted toward the outside of the penalty area, away from goal, into what looked like a tightening angle. And then, from the edge of the box, he simply rifled it. A low, hard, precise strike that flashed across the turf and beat Verbruggen at his post. 1-1. The Japanese section of the stadium erupted. The lead the Netherlands had worked 50 minutes to build had survived for barely 6. The game was wide open now, and you could feel the temperature rising. The Dutch, to their credit, did not panic. They responded the way the better-resourced team is supposed to. They went straight back at Japan, and within minutes they had their lead restored. The 64th minute. The ball found Crescencio Somerville, a lively young winger making just his 3rd appearance for the national team. Somerville received it, stepped inside onto his stronger foot, opened up his body and curled a beautifully measured shot that bent away from Suzuki and kissed the inside of the post on its way in. A gorgeous goal, the kind of finish that announces a player. 2-1 to the Netherlands, Somerville's 3rd cap and his first international goal, and it had come at a World Cup to put his country back in front. The Orange looked, in that moment, like they were about to become the early frontrunners of Group F. And for a while, it held. The Netherlands managed the game. They had the lead, they had the ball, and they had the experience to see it out. The clock ticked past 70 minutes, past 75, past 80. Coman finally introduced Memphis Depay, his talisman, to help kill the game off in those closing 20 minutes. Everything was pointing toward a hard-fought but ultimately successful Dutch opening victory. But Moriyasu was not finished. And what the Japanese coach did next was the bold decision of the entire night. Trailing by a goal, with time running short, he didn't tinker. He didn't make one cautious change. He emptied his bench. He threw on all 5 of his substitutes, a complete tactical gamble, flooding the pitch with fresh legs and attacking intent. Among them, crucially, were winger Junya Ito and striker Koki Ogawa. It was all or nothing. Either Japan would find an equalizer, or they'd be picked off on the counter and lose by 2. There was no middle ground in a move that aggressive. And slowly, the gamble began to work. The fresh Japanese leg started to push the tiring Dutch backward. Japan began to pin the Netherlands inside their own half. The Dutch, who had controlled so much of the game, suddenly found themselves defending for their lives, clearing balls, blocking crosses, scrambling. The momentum had completely flipped. You could see it. You could feel that something was building. There was a warning sign, too. Mickey van de Ven, the Dutch defender, was shown a yellow card for a tactical foul on Junya Ito, hauling down the substitute to stop a Japanese break. A small moment, but a telling one. It told you that Japan were now the team carrying the threat, and that the Netherlands were resorting to fouls to slow them down. Then came the 88th minute, and the moment that will define this match forever. Japan won a corner on the right. Junya Ito, fresh off the bench, stood over it. He swung the delivery into the crowded penalty area, into that chaotic mess of bodies that every corner becomes in the dying moments of a tight game. And rising above everyone, climbing higher than any defender around him, was the substitute Koki Ogawa. He got his head to it, powering the ball goalward. And here's where football's cruelty reveals itself. The ball, on its way toward goal, struck Daichi Kamada. It glanced off him, taking a final, telling deflection that sent it spinning in a direction Verbruggen could not adjust to. The Dutch keeper got a hand to it, but could only parry the deflected ball into his own net. 2-2. In the 88th minute, the stadium exploded into a wall of blue noise. Japan had done it. The equalizer was officially credited to Kamada, that fortuitous, brutal final touch, but it was a goal born entirely of Moriyasu's nerve and his team's relentless late pressure. The Dutch players stood frozen, hands on heads, staring at the turf, unable to process what had just happened to them. There were still 6 minutes of stoppage time to survive, and the drama wasn't quite over. Japan, sensing blood, kept pushing, suddenly looking the more likely side to grab a winner. At the other end, the Netherlands, stung and desperate, threw bodies forward in search of a third lead. Denzel Dumfries fired in a deep cross toward the back post, and Teun Koopmeiners rose to meet it, but he couldn't keep his header down, and the chance sailed away. The final whistle eventually blew on a 2-2 draw, and the reaction told you everything. The Japanese players celebrated like they'd won. The Dutch trudged off like they'd lost, because, in a sense, both of those things were true. Now let's talk about what this result actually meant, because the numbers behind it are genuinely remarkable. Before this night, the Netherlands had never, in their entire World Cup history, failed to win a match in which they had twice taken the lead. Never. They led twice in Dallas, through Van Dijk, and through Somerville, and they still didn't win. A piece of history, decades in the making, erased by a deflected header in the 88th minute. There was a silver lining for the Dutch, if you went looking for one. The draw did extend their unbeaten run in World Cup group stage matches to 17 games, which is itself a present-day record, so they remain unbeaten in the group phase. But that statistic offered cold comfort. The expanded 48-team format meant their qualification was not yet in any real danger, but dropping 2 points in the opener made the whole group considerably harder. With Sweden and Tunisia still to come, the path to topping Group F suddenly looked a great deal steeper than it had at kickoff. For Japan, the feeling was entirely different. This was vindication. They came in being talked about quietly as a dark horse, a sleeper contender, and they backed it up by going toe-to-toe with one of Europe's elite and refusing to lose. One of their wingbacks, Yukinari Sugawara, had spoken before the game about being ready to fight for the World Cup, about fighting for their country, their families, their friends, and all of the Japanese people. After a performance like that, those words didn't sound like empty motivation anymore. They sounded like a statement of genuine intent. There were smaller stories woven through the night as well. The Netherlands made a piece of quieter history of their own, fielding a starting 11 with no home-based players for the first time ever in a World Cup match, a sign of how thoroughly Dutch talent has spread across the elite leagues of Europe. And on the possession battle, the Dutch dominated the ball as expected, holding around 54% to Japan's 37%, and they outshot Japan with more efforts and more on target. By the raw numbers, the Netherlands were the better team. But football is not decided by the raw numbers. It's decided by goals. And Japan found one when it mattered most. So where does that leave Group F? Wide open. The Netherlands now have to regroup and prove they can win without that perfect start, with the pressure ratcheting up against opponents who will sit deeper and make life difficult. Japan, meanwhile, march on with a point and a swagger, heading into their next fixtures against Tunisia and Sweden, arguably as the new favorites to win the group. From the team that had never beaten the Netherlands, that's a stunning shift in just 90 dramatic minutes. That's the lesson of this match, in the end. The Netherlands did almost everything right and still couldn't get the win, because Japan simply would not accept defeat. They conceded twice, fell behind twice, and answered both times. The second answer arriving in the dying moments through a coach's fearless gamble and a striker's refusal to stop running. 2-2 in Dallas, a draw on paper. But anyone who watched it knows the truth. This felt like the night Japan announced themselves to the world, and the night the Netherlands were reminded that their old curse, the curse of the beautiful team that just can't quite get over the line, may not be finished with them yet. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, and subscribe for more World Cup 2026 match analysis and key moments. Until next time.